It occurs to me that as I've talked to thousands of business owners out there, many of them will say, I don't feel like I'm qualified to lead. And when they say that, I think, me too. I've never felt qualified. I've never felt ready. I've never felt like I've mastered it. There's a very real imposter syndrome that gets in our head. And I think when we're kind of imagining ourselves training our teams, there's kind of this fallacy that we have to be an expert at the thing that we're training them on. How do you lean in even when you aren't all the way, there yourself?
Well, there's two things here. One, if I truly do not feel qualified, I grab a buddy like Brendan. And I feel very good about teaching on difficult conversations, but I don't have an easy format mapped out. I'm not going to have time to do that right now. He already has it. So phoning a friend is always okay. Or grabbing if you've heard a podcast or watched a YouTube video that you feel like is impactful, that's okay. You can be the facilitator. Your job is to connect the content to the people who need it as the leader. So you can grab that TED Talk and you can watch it as a team. And then you can say, hey, I want to hear your guys' thoughts on that. And that might be an easier approach versus you feeling like you're having to write some training from scratch. But the second thing I want to say about that is you are more qualified than you think you are. People just want to hear about your real life experience with things. And so spending some time thinking about, well, they're going to be up against having to have difficult conversations or having effective one-on-one meetings or whatever. How have I done that? Or what did I royally screw up on and learn from that I can share with these guys? Just like I just shared with you the leadership bench depth total catastrophe where I had no director of sales candidate. That's all people want to hear. And telling a story is the best way. And then talking and going, gosh, this is what I learned. This is what I wish I'd done differently then. Hopefully you guys see that I'm doing that differently now. This is not some formal leadership thing where I've Xeroxed worksheets. This is a conversation.
Yeah, and they can tell if you're faking it too.
Absolutely.
They just want you to be real and be in it with them and say, hey, let's learn this together.
Yeah.
That's what you're saying. If you grab a TED Talk or a book, let's go through a book together.
Yes.
I'm going to facilitate how do we think this should look in our team. And it's really about having those meaningful conversations.
Absolutely.
More than monologuing at them all the time.
That's right. That's why I love it when people bring some of their key leaders to one of our events. The conversations, when you carve out the space, especially when you get out of the office and carve out that space that you will have with people is so powerful that when you're in the office and you're in the grind, it doesn't just happen. You have to carve out that space. And ideally, I love it if you can go to something like an event or watch a video or whatever, and it creates those conversations naturally.
I've watched you for almost a decade be very intentional about experiences with your team. Getting off site, finding new ways to kind of shake it up, going to a restaurant, just having a meal together, going on a retreat. You've done that very intentionally. Say more about why that's important versus just getting in the next office and the next Tuesday at 2:00 meeting.
I realized if we don't like each other and trust each other, we're not going to be able to lead the team. If your leadership team is dysfunctional, your team is going to be dysfunctional. You're not going to get the stuff done. We talk a lot about you move at the speed of trust, and you have to do work. That trust doesn't just happen. It's not like on day one of being a leadership team, everybody automatically trusts and like each other. And we actually had a situation as we were forming a couple of years ago where two of the people on my very small leadership team did not trust and like each other. And so I said, you know what? We're going to have breakfast every week. Every Friday morning, we're going to have breakfast together. And what's cool is you start to really understand people's hearts. And that way, when stuff goes wrong, because it will, it's not going to be perfect. There's going to be situations that flare up where you're like, why did they do that? But when you know their heart, you don't get mad at them the same way. You don't, because you trust them and you go, okay, we must have had a misunderstanding, or I can see how this went sideways. And that breakfast became the highlight of everybody's week. After a couple of months, they would say, man, I love having this time together. And so I really saw our ability to get to the last 10% of truth fast, where we actually say what we feel in leadership meetings because we had built this trust and rapport by having breakfast together, or by, like you said, once a year, I like to go over and do a little 2-night retreat where we talk about what we dream for the future, and we talk about some strategy stuff, and we play a lot of board games and get silly and have meals together.
That's fun. I've been on some of those.
I think you were the OG of instigating those.
They do get silly. I can imagine there's leaders right now going, oh, I've got 2 leaders and they don't trust each other. good. We're going to have breakfast together every Friday. Now, what do we talk about?
Well, and I tell people up front my goal. I say, okay, so in that situation, I said, all right, listen, you guys, our team is only going to be as effective as we are. We have to have trust and rapport as a leadership team, or we are going to be the lid holding this team back. And I feel right now like we're not running at 100%. So what I'd like to do is start having breakfast together once a week. And I just want to, that time, there's not going to be an agenda.
So it's just organic.
It's just organic. We're going to talk about if there's something in your week that you want to talk about, like something came up and we need to help you problem solve, or if we just talk about what vacation people are going on. We're not going to have this like agenda. We're literally just going to get together for an hour. We're going to hang out. And there are a lot of times where stuff will pop up where it's like, oh my gosh, this thing happened. What should I do about this? Or I have this team member. And just that problem solving together. And we did talk about funny stuff that happened, especially when we were all home for a period during quarantine. People's kids were running in the background. So we still laugh about that stuff. Like it's just a time to have shared experiences and get to know each other.
But it sounds like the premium is on FaceTime with each other, not that you as the leader are trying to be the counselor or create interventions or cause them to have. It's just over time, having more FaceTime creates that trust.
And you'll really learn things about people that'll create a lot of empathy. We were on a retreat, I think it was 2 weeks ago, and we did personal histories. If you've ever read Pat Lencioni's 5 Dysfunctions of a Team, he talks about this exercise. So personal histories, it's usually like maybe 5 questions where it's like, how many siblings do you have and what is your birth order? What's the first job you had? What's something that was really tough for you growing up? Something kind of like that. Nothing like crazy deep, but stuff that is insightful. And we found out that one of our new leaders is one of 13 children. And it just gave me perspective on this person. And I saw them outside of just our leader of our development area. It was cool.
Yeah. And if you hear about how somebody grew up in their story, you start to learn like their struggles and challenges they had growing up and that kind of thing. It creates a lot of empathy.
Yes. Empathy and understanding where you're kind of like, okay, I can see why they might be sensitive to that thing, or there's this baggage that they have around this, and that's probably what's causing. I mean, let's be real, we're all broken people. The beautiful thing is daily you can work on that. And so when you kind of understand someone's brokenness, which we all have, you do have that empathy, but you also understand how to what we were discussing earlier, how they might edit or automate or see life.
I think that every human's deepest desire is just to be known.
Absolutely.
And when you
to
can
be
see
accepted.
them and say you're significant and I know you, but you can't really know somebody if you don't know their story.
That's right.
And you can't know their story if you're just frantically running through and getting all the work done all the time.
And if I'm going to lead someone, I have to have trust with them. Otherwise, they're not going to accept feedback from me. If I don't understand where they're trying to go, and if they don't trust that I'm trying to help them get there, why would they listen to any of my feedback?